Star Trek Online has a content drought problem, and it's mismatches with their monetization model, and it's going to affect the longevity of the game, in my opinion. The game has been around for 12 years already, which is plenty to celebrate. The developers think it could go another 10 years. I don't know in its current state if that's possible, but we're going to look at some ideas I have about what they can do to help improve the longevity of the game, or future proof it if you like. But before we can do that, we have to look at where the game is now and how it got there. It's going to be a little bit of a journey, but I hope you're willing to go on it with me. So there's an old saying that content is king, and that's definitely true in the entertainment space. There's something I like to call the expectation of content, which is to say that if I engage with a platform or a store, I expect there to be content available that I want to consume. And that just makes sense, right? You're not going to go shop at a store unless you think they probably have something that you're going to want to buy. And there's a few different models. And the first one is what I would call the bookstore model, which is how you buy most things in life. You go into the store, they have a wide selection of products, you pick the one you want, it has a fixed price, you pay for it, you take it home, end of transaction. There's also subscription models where you could think of it like a library or like a buffet. You pay a one-time or a recurring fee, and you get unlimited access to everything on offer. When you do it that way, you need to have not only a wide variety of products available, but they need to be high quantity and high quality, and that's pretty hard for any one producer to do. So businesses like that tend to be aggregators. You're watching one of them right now. YouTube lets any old idiot like me post videos, and so they're able to get a large selection of content, and then they just use the algorithm to allow the best stuff to filter up to the top. Whereas something like Netflix, they have a little bit more of a gatekeeping for quality standards, but they still go out of their way to get as much content as possible because they don't ever want you to turn it on and not be able to find anything to watch, because then you'll probably cancel your subscription. But those two ways are somewhat similar. The other big model that you could have is live entertainment. So the first one that comes to mind is sports. Sports don't change very much. There's not a lot of variety there. If you've seen one game of basketball or football, you've pretty much seen them all. When you're watching a sport, you don't know how it's going to end. And crucially, no one else does either because it's live. And that creates a little bubble that everyone who's participating in can live in. And it creates this social space where you are connected and bonded with the other people who are there participating in it live. And so if you go see a live concert, you may have heard the music already at home. You're probably already a fan, but only the people who were there that night got that specific rendition of their music. Only the people who were in the stadium for the Super Bowl got to see it live. And no one's really itching to go and rewatch the 1983 Super Bowl from the year I was born, because at this point, it's just another football game. When the Super Bowl comes around again next year, everyone's going to want to see it. When you're talking about the bookstore model or the library model, the thing that the customer wants and the thing that the company makes money off of are the same thing. I want the thing and I pay for it, and that's how they make money. But with live entertainment, it's different. They tend to monetize the ancillary stuff. A movie theater is a good example. If you go see a movie on opening night, you're paying a premium to see it in the theater with other people when it opens. And the movie theaters make their money off of the concessions. It's the overpriced food and drinks. Or in the case of a concert, it's the merchandise. So you get the shirt that says that you were there. There's a disconnect between how the money is made from what the content is that's being provided. What does this have to do with video games? Well, video games can operate in the same sorts of way. They're businesses that provide content and products as well. Games came out, you paid your $60, you brought it home, you played it as much as you want or you didn't, and that was the end of it, and no one really cared. There is some trend now towards more subscription-based models, and we're not talking about MMOs yet, but I'm talking about things like Xbox Game Pass that wants to be the Netflix of games, and that stuff looks pretty promising. But the real trend in video games has been to shift from that model where the content and the money making are the same thing, to a live entertainment model where the money is made on all the side stuff. MMOs have been one of the vanguards of that over the years until mobile gaming came and just completely overtook everything. And I would love to get to Star Trek Online at this point, but unfortunately, I think we need to take a moment to talk about World of Warcraft. And the reason for that is because Star Trek Online, like many, many MMOs, started off as a WoW clone, right down to the fact that it has hard-coded animosity between Federation and KDF, the same way that the Alliance and the Horde. So I'm going to compare and contrast the developments of World of Warcraft over the years with how Star Trek Online has developed over the years, and where they both ended up, because they have different stories and they have different strengths and weaknesses. So World of Warcraft came along. It was still stuck in that sort of old mentality where you had the sort of bookstore approach where you would pay a flat fee, about $60 for the expansion itself, and then the subscription was meant to just be enough money to pay for running the servers and paying the support staff. And all that makes complete common sense. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a model that's worked great for them. But you need a large player base in order to make that work. And of course, World of Warcraft was hugely successful, so we had all these copycat games come out to try and copy it. But most of them were never able to accumulate the critical mass of players that would allow the subscriptions and the one-time purchases to fund the development of the game or to really make it profitable. And Star Trek Online was one of those games. All these other MMOs that sort of failed to get the success they wanted, in an effort to keep the thing going, a lot of them went free to play. And initially that was kind of a compromise. It was a way of keeping their player base, but then they had to find some other way to monetize the game. So they started doing microtransactions, which were coming onto the scene around that time. And unfortunately, or I would say unfortunately, people discovered that when you do it that way, you can get a very small percentage of your player base to spend an exorbitant amount of money. Because the old way, the subscription way, everyone pays their $15 or whatever. There isn't an opportunity for people to pay more, and you would think that they wouldn't want to, but it turns out some people do. They spend way too much money on these games. And so World of Warcraft suddenly became the game, at least in terms of monetization, that was behind. So it started aping its competitors. It was no longer the case that MMOs wanted to be like World of Warcraft. Now that was a detriment. You didn't want to be stuck with only subscription revenue. And so World of Warcraft inevitably brought in those microtransactions, and they stopped reporting their subscriber numbers, and they were reporting that their revenue was going up even though their player base was going down, because they were getting more money out of fewer players. So if you look at an MMO that would launch today, it would be free to play probably. We've seen a few things like Lost World that have tried to buck the trend, but generally, especially mobile games, they're all free to play to begin with, and the plan from the start is to work on microtransactions and get the money that way. World of Warcraft figured out that their model was really more of a live service model, that worked better. Kind of metrics that mattered weren't whether someone is paying for their subscription, it was how invested they were in the game. And so you get all these things like daily active users, monthly active users, how long do people play when they log in, and all that kind of stuff. Focus has been shifted entirely towards in-game activities. Each expansion basically obsoletes the one that came before it. And because the content is so transient, it really matters that you're doing it when it's new. So it's sort of like the Super Bowl comparison I made earlier. Playing old expansions at this point is like watching an old Super Bowl. Nobody cares about that. They want to play the stuff when it's new. And if you feel like you have to play it when you're new, then you're going to be in that social bubble, and you're going to be more likely to spend money on microtransactions. Star Trek Online had a different basis to start with. Instead of having raids as something that they could focus on and grow and turn into that moving social environment, they had episodic story content that was very strong, and it still is very strong. It's one of the best parts of the game. I said in my top 5 best things about the game video that it was one of the strengths, and it still is. They're only putting out a handful of episodes a year at this point, but they're all very high quality. They've improved the quality over the years. 3 episodes a year isn't really going to keep most people's attention. So They're chasing that live service monetization where they want you logging in every day, logging in every month, playing for long periods of time so that they can sell you one of the 30 ships that come out in a year, but there isn't really anything to do in between content releases. How do they fix that? Initially, they didn't have a fix for it, and the game felt very dead. And the players stepped up and really filled in that with their own end game. Everyone has their own end game. So there's Space Barbie, there's DPS chasing. A lot of the content creators I know for Star Trek Online consider content creation to be their end game. They did hire a mobile game producer to come in and try and fill that gap because they needed some reason for people to log in every day. And what they essentially ended up doing was turning it into a big mobile game. So we ended up with endeavors, which are basically just randomized busy work every day where they bribe you with some power creep. And that's what it all is. It's all just bribes, right? They say, listen, you're not intrinsically motivated to log in and do this content. And the reason why is because story content is like an episode of a TV show. It's designed to make you feel like you're playing and you're in an episode of Star Trek. You know, if you watch an episode of a TV show or read a book, the first time you really enjoy it. And you may go back and do it a second or third time. But the replayability, the rewatchability, all that, it drops off pretty dramatically after a while. You're not reading the same book 15 times. You're not watching the same movie 100 times. How do they get you to do that? Well, they just bribe you. That's what all these never-ending events are. Log into the game every day for 21 days and do the same mission or the same TFO and we'll give you a console. Log in for, 5 events during the year and play all this content that you've already played and you don't want to play anymore and we'll give you a starship. It's effective to a degree, but it's also the laziest and least good way they could have tried to fix that problem. And I don't think that's going to hold people's attention forever. They don't really advertise the game. So we kind of have a Frankenstein's monster here. Star Trek Online started out as a WoW clone. It failed almost immediately on the subscription model. They switched to a live service monetization model, but they never adapted their content the same way World of Warcraft did. So now they have these huge content droughts that they have to fill. And the players stepped in initially to fill some of them, and then later on they came in with the new EP and filled them with all this mobile game stuff. Can the game go 10 more years like that? I don't know, but here's some suggestions for things I think they could do that would help out. So we need to fix that mismatch between the monetization and the content delivery. And the first way they could do it is to find a better way to motivate people to log in between the content drought. So we need a dynamic gameplay rather than static gameplay, because what we have now is log in and play a mission, log in and do a TFO, but those never change. And there's no sense of progression and there's no sense of community involvement because they're all instanced content. And especially with the story missions, you're doing it single player by yourself. So it's the same every time. It's so repetitive. We need new gameplay systems, and we have plenty of hooks in the game already they could do this with. We have fleets, we have reputations. Maybe you could have some kind of diplomacy system. Maybe you could have some kind of territorial disputes, something that's non-combat related. And that's important because combat and PvP are a good way to do this if the game was designed with it initially. If you look at games that are designed around player competition, like League of Legends or Call of Duty or Rocket League or insert whatever game you want, people are willing to sit down and play that over and over and over again because it's sort of like participating in live sports. You don't get bored of playing basketball just because you've played 100 games, because each game is new and you don't know whether you're going to win or lose and you don't know how it's going to turn out and you're really invested in the action while it's happening. There is PvP in Star Trek Online, but it's badly imbalanced. And even if they were to fix that, it would be completely pay to win, and it's just not a good route for them to try and go in. So they should go for more of the PvE angle, I think. Now, if they can't find a way to give us those dynamic social gameplay experiences to hold us over in between the static content drops, the other option would be to flip the script. So right now, we get like 30 new ships a year. They put out like 2 a month at least, and we only get a handful of episodes. So instead of charging for the ships and giving us the stories for free, do it the other way around. It wouldn't be the only game that did that. There are other games like that where the base game is free, but you have to pay for the expansions. So maybe put out 2 expansions a year that have like 10 episodes each and charge for those, and then put out a few ships a year that people can earn by playing the game. I don't think they're going to go that route, but that would be another way to go, and it would maintain the same sort of development model they have now, because really the only thing they produce at this point are new ships and new stories. So they could still get by only doing ships and stories, just flip around how much of each you do and which thing you're charging for. Now, maybe there's plenty of other ideas that would work just as well that I'm not clever enough to think of, but pretty much anything they do needs to come with an additional layer of improvement. So I complained in my 12th anniversary video that the Tailor was really unintuitive and unenjoyable to use, and I think they need to ramp up the advertising to get new players in, and then they need to go through and look at the experience of playing the game, and they need to polish it up so that when new people come in, they will feel like they're getting a good experience. All of these suggestions are going to require some sacrifice in terms of short-term revenue, because they're going to have to put some investment into the game. At some point, people will get bored and leave. So if they really want the game to go another 10 years, and I think that would be great, by the way, because it has a lot of strengths, and it has been a really strong source of storytelling for Star Trek in the absence of all the TV shows until the new wave of stuff came along. We just got Kate Mulgrew in the studio to do some voice acting. The DS9 stuff, I always say it, but I'll say it again, and because some of the actors are dead now, we're never going to get anything better than that. So if you want closure on DS9, this is probably the best place you're going to get it outside of maybe some of the officially licensed books or whatever. So there is a lot here. There's a strong base that's been going on for 12 years. If they really want it to go on for another decade, they're going to have to reinvest in the game. They can't just keep going along the way they have been. But maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe it would be fine. I'd love to know what you guys think, so feel free to leave that in the comment section. What I do know for sure is that there's going to be 2 posts on my community tab. One will be available to everyone. One will be available to channel members only, where you can post questions for an upcoming Q&A live stream that I'm going to be doing. Priority answers will be going out to the channel members, of course, and the live chat during that stream will only be available to channel members at the Admiral level or higher, because that is one of the perks that I gave out for that subscription. I'm not going to drag this outro out any longer. Thank you guys very much for watching. Take care of yourselves as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.